Hello, my name is Russell Etzenhouser. I'm an elder at St. Mark, and it's my privilege today to talk a little bit about Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman, as well as kind of looking at the second chapter through the lens of Luke chapter 4, verses 14 through 21. In chapter 2, Reverend Thurman is talking about one of the hounds of hell, as he calls them, which is fear. And he talks about fear, and it's really fear that is completely disabling, and it's a fear that not all of us, I think, can fully appreciate unless you really think about those times in which you aren't in control. And so he talks about, because each and every one of us face fear, and in fact, we face fear in a lot of different ways. And it can be a fear of trying something new. It can be a fear of having to do something that is very difficult. But what Thurman is talking about is the fear that the disinherited or the oppressed feel. And it's fear that's brought on by a societal system that holds that person back or keeps that group of people marginalized and unable to move forward. It's a fear that comes quietly in the night, that when you go to sleep at night, you could be awoken and retribution could be taken upon you, and you have absolutely no control. In fact, he talks about how the person is completely outmatched. In fact, he likens it to a rabbit that's being chased by a dog who eventually wears out and is quivering in fear, and there's nothing that rabbit can do. And so as an oppressed or marginalized person, that is a fear that is coming from systematic racism or some other situation that is designed to keep someone down, segregation, and many other oppressive systems that have been constructed by people in power to try to ensure their dominance over a disinherited group. And so as Reverend Thurman looks at different ways in which people can try to deal with that, one of the things that he talks about is how God knows the number of hairs on each one of our heads, that God takes care of the bird in the field and provides food for that bird. And in fact, God clothes the lily in garments finer than those of King Solomon. And so if God will take care of a bird in the field, the least of these, God is there to help take care of us. When we realize that we are children of God, it empowers us to be able to separate from that fear, because that fear is completely out of our control. And so if we put our control into God's hands, then as children of God, we can let God deal with those things. It doesn't matter what happens to us, because in the end, we belong to God, and it is God that will care for us. Now, in Luke chapter 4, this is a really interesting time because Jesus has come back to Nazareth for the first time since he began his ministry. And on the Sabbath, he goes to the synagogue, which is a custom, and he reads from the scrolls. And so the keeper of the scrolls brings out Isaiah to Jesus. Jesus unrolls the scroll. And I find it very interesting, the verses that Jesus reads from Isaiah. Jesus reads, he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release for the captives, in recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." That's a beautiful passage that he selected, and he selected one that highlights the poor, the marginalized, and the disinherited. And when we think of ourselves as children of God, when God came in the person of Jesus to save us, he came, and this is really fascinating to me, because he actually proclaims then that he is the fulfillment of the scripture. And in doing so, not as a king ascending from heaven on a cloud, but rather as someone that has come to help the marginalized, to help the disinherited. And that is just a beautiful way in which to think about it. And I think that God calls us to lean into that as we accept that we are all children of God, and we all have a role to play as we work together to care for each other, to comfort each other, to recognize that it is up to us to turn things over to God. There are so many things that we don't have control over, And if we can just realize that it is better if we put those things into God's hands, it helps us to be able to get through that. Not all of us have that same perspective that marginalized individual has, but all of us from time to time come to realize that we are not in control. And so as we turn things over to God, it helps us to overcome those fears. It helps us to be better together. And hopefully we can lean into that as children of God together, and we can help to put some of these systems of oppression behind us and help us to work together to bring God's kingdom to earth today. Thank you.